For Trump means your groceries will be cheaper. So many people mention, I go in, so many people mention groceries, that beautiful but simple word, groceries. Sir, my groceries. You don't think of it that way, but that's what they mention more than anything, my groceries. Your paychecks will be higher, your streets will be safer and cleaner. Your communities will be richer, and your future will be brighter than ever before. This will be the golden age of America. I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have.
You said something that caught me right away when we were discussing various issues just before we started.
We got the XAI data center or supercomputer center training from beginning installation to start of training in 19 days, which is the fastest that anyone has ever gotten a supercomputer to train.
And is that in that new building off to the side?
That's in Memphis, actually.
It's in Memphis?
Yeah.
Oh, so that's where you were?
Yeah.
I see.
Memphis,
okay.
The capital of ancient Egypt.
Right. Yeah, you're bringing what?
Perhaps that's where our new God will come from.
Yeah, no kidding.
Perhaps that's where our new God will come from.
No kidding. Yeah, I wish that was funny.
Memphis, the capital of ancient Egypt.
Yeah, you're bringing what?
Perhaps that's where our new God will come from.
Yeah, okay, so I want to talk to you about alignment.
I wish that was funny.
Yeah.
Hey YouTube world, Harvest is Plenty. Thanks for stopping by to check out the video. Please don't forget to hit or click that thumbs up button for me. So I hope you guys had a great holiday weekend, or just spending time with your family, your loved ones, catching up with your friends, or maybe just time alone in solitude. You know, it's going to be needed because 2025 is approaching, and this most definitely will be one for the history books. That's for sure. The Vatican, they're very excited about 2025. They declare it to be the year of the Jubilee. The Luciferian-run organization, the United Nations, who are trying to overturn God's judgment at the Tower of Babel, who is headquartered in New York City, the Big Apple, they're very excited as well about the possibilities that lie ahead. Klaus Schwab was excited, he and his World Economic Forum organizations, because the Great Reset is on the horizon for them. You know, he's stepping down. I did a video about that because everything has been put in place. It's ready. You know, Trump and his people and his bloodline and the rest of the Luciferians and the bloodline families that run America, they're also very excited. And for those of you who don't understand why I say Trump and the bloodline families, because he traces his lineage back to Charlemagne the God. So do most the rest of the presidents of the United States as well. I did a video about that. It's called President's Day. Look it up if you have any questions of what I'm talking about. So some interesting times are ahead. That's for sure. I hope to do a couple videos each day before January 1st, 2025 to get caught up and to catch you guys up on what lies ahead and, you know, what I see coming down the road. Now, this golden time of day, this golden age, as I said before, it was the time during the days of Noah when the fallen angels from Genesis 6 came down. They mated with human women, created children that were half human, half angel. They were called Nephilim. And when these Nephilim died, because they were created by angels on the earth, their spirits remained. That's where demons come from. Demons are just disembodied Nephilim spirits. And they remained, and they to this day, and it's the demons that plague man. That's the demons that people conjure, that people get possessed by. I have a video coming up about that as well. But during that time, for most, they saw it was a great time of prosperity, happiness, and joy. They were able to conjure openly, commune with the fallen angels openly, and the Nephilim, worship after strange gods, and do all kind of things. These fallen angels taught mankind a lot of knowledge, that they weren't supposed to have. I will be covering that in another video that's upcoming as well. And to them, it was their golden time of day. It was prosperity, upon the earth. But to the Lord, he saw something different. As I read Genesis 6, verses 5 through 6, it says, Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The Lord was sorry that he made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. And that's what's coming next year, 2026, 2027, and beyond, is that once these fallen ones eventually return with their technology, their knowledge, and all of these things, the falling away from God will continue and will accelerate, and mankind would think it would be the greatest time ever. They're going to turn their back on God. They're going to attack Christians. It's going to be crazy. You're going to see it, and most people that you know, and I hope none of you guys, are going to worship the beast, and they're going to take his mark. That's written in the scripture. But let's get on to this golden time of day so you guys can understand what it's about. All right. I love you guys. Until my next video, may the good Lord continue to bless you and your family.
7, you've titled it The Golden Age. You make the statements, quote, the descent and habitation of the gods among men was no small occurrence in the minds of the ancients. Memorialized in mythology of culture far and wide, it was the single most significant event ever to have happened on planet Earth. In the Golden Age, the gods copulated with human women who conceived and gave birth to the golden race, hybrid half-breed heroes of the old world, end quote. Wow. Timothy, tell us more about this golden race and who were these hybrid half-breed heroes of the old world?
Well, most people have heard of the Golden Age. The term Golden Age has been used and misused over and over, even in many movies and in many books. And just the term Golden Age itself is recycled for anything. There's the Golden Age of rock and roll, the Golden Age of this or that, of Hollywood. So we recycle this term over and over, but we don't often consider the origin of the term Golden Age. Where does it actually come from, and what does it actually mean? Because the term Golden Age, the concept of the Golden Age, is universal in the ancient world. It's universal. You can go to the Middle East, you can go up to the Germanic nations, you can go across the Atlantic to South America, and you are going to find this conceptualized period of time called the Golden Age. The Golden Age to the Greeks, because that's where we actually get the terminology from, but it's designated with different terms across the earth, but it's the same concept. It's the same conceptualization of the dateless past when something very important happened on planet Earth that all of these ancient cultures are memorializing. We get the term Golden Age, that specific terminology, from the Greeks. The Greeks talked about the ages of the earth, and that the most blessed time, the most blissful time on earth was this time that they designated as the Golden Age. This was the time in which the gods lived among men, and not only did they live among men, not only did they cohabitate the earth with the human species, they actually copulated with human women. They copulated and they procreated families on Earth. So you have these mythical figures such as Hercules and so forth, who were the offspring of the gods and men. And these figures are oftentimes referred to as the golden race. Again, throughout the world, you can find mythology related to that general theme, that there was a point in time when the gods lived among men, and it was the most blessed time on earth. It was the most wonderful time. It was a time of great knowledge, a proliferation of knowledge and wisdom from the gods. The Egyptians remember it as Zep Tepi, the first time. And Zep Tepi was the time when Osiris and the other gods dwelt among men and copulated with human women and gave birth to hybrid offspring who became the kings and the rulers of Egypt. It's universal. This narrative can be found in the written records and oral traditions of every major culture on Earth. So something really important here is being recorded. And the Golden Age is also associated with a great cataclysm that annihilated the civilization that existed during that time, that destroyed, that brought to ruin the world of the gods, the empire of the gods, as I call it in my book. So the ancients universally remember this Golden Age period of time, the first time, Zep Tepi, to the Egyptians, and they remember the cataclysmic ruination of the old world, as I designated in my book. The old world, we think of the old world as, the old European system, the post Roman Empire world, leading up to the Victorian times. To us, that's what we think of when we think of the old world. And we're living now in the new world. But to the ancients, the old world was the antediluvian world, the world before the flood. And you're going to find in the mythos of, again, many diverse cultures, you're going to find record of a cataclysmic event or a series of cataclysms that rocked the earth in the distant past. But most of the time, you're going to find that the ancients are remembering a flood, a deluge, more than anything else, because it's the deluge that really was sort of the nail in the coffin of this cataclysm. And of course, there were earthquakes and volcanic eruptions and so forth, probably due to the impact of an asteroid or a comet, or perhaps some other kind of cosmological event that occurred. But one thing is for sure, it precipitated a massive flood, perhaps a universal flood, or at least flooding all over the earth, because it is recorded so universally. Now, one of the reasons why we have this ubiquitous record of the Golden Age and of the cataclysm that brought it to ruin, the empire of the gods, is because after this cataclysm, mankind was reduced to, most accounts say, one family. Of course, we're all familiar with the biblical account that talks about Noah and his 3 sons and their wives. And so all of the information from the Golden Age was only preserved in one family. So all of the knowledge and the history and the culture and the language came through one family, was preserved through the cataclysm. Some other myths talk about, other individuals or groups of people who survived. But the idea is that the knowledge from the old world, the empire of the gods, all of that knowledge and learning was lost. And only some of it survived through one family or one group of people who then began to repopulate the earth post-flood. And so the stories of the antediluvian world, of the Golden Age, all those stories, all those oral traditions began from one point of origin, and which I think is very clearly the Middle East. And even more specifically, right around the Mount Hermon area, the Mount Ararat, that general region in there, where in southern Turkey, northern Syria, that area, nobody knows exactly where, but it's in the region of Göbekli Tepe, and some of those most ancient ruins, megalithic ruins. So it's all very interesting. And some people believe that the Golden Age mythos is referring to a high civilization, a human civilization that existed in the antediluvian world, that just normal, everyday human beings, but that were able to progress to an astounding level in terms of their technological capabilities and their knowledge. And by the way, the technological capabilities of the ancients, of the antediluvians, would not resemble our technology. There is not only one path of technology. If we imagine our current course of the current course that we've taken in technological development is only one path. It's like the stem of a tree that branches out into many shoots and branches. We've taken one of those branches in terms of our technological development. We've gone very mechanical, using combustion and using electricity. But that is certainly not the only way to develop technology. It's the way we have developed technology in the modern age. But it's very possible that the ancients had taken some other courses in terms of technological development and discovered some things that we have yet to discover in the modern age. And they were using other kinds of technologies based on the same laws of science that we have, based on the laws of nature, the universal laws of nature and the scientific principles that we are aware of today. But perhaps they knew some things that we didn't because they were thinking in a different way. They weren't just thinking combustion and electricity. We make things move through the creation of explosions. That's how your car moves. It's internal combustion. Combustion is an explosion. So we use gasoline, we use oil to create these explosions. That's how we propel things. It's a very aggressive way and frankly not the best way to create propulsion. There's lots of other ways that could be harnessed, lots of other things, and there's theories out there, solar energy and all kinds of things that the ancients might have been tapping into that might have taken them on a different developmental route. So when we talk about technology in the deep past, I always tell people, don't go looking for laptops and Lamborghinis, because that's not the kind of technology that they were developing. When we talk about technology, I don't know what kind of technology they were developing, but I'm fairly certain it wasn't our kind of technology. They weren't interested in social media and they didn't have internet and things like that. And so sometimes I think we get very narrow-minded when we think about technology. We think that our technology is the only kind of technology that could possibly be conceived of, when in reality, who knows what other kinds of technologies could have been. We're talking communications technologies. We're talking about propulsion technologies. We're talking about weapons technologies, using the laws of science and physics and using the natural resources in a different way than we do today. And so I just went on a little tangent there, and I apologize for that.
You mentioned that it's not so much that there was an advanced civilization during the Golden Age, but an advanced fraternity within the civilization, what you call the golden race. Yes. I found this idea very interesting because, when you hear about an ancient advanced civilization, you hear about a civilization like it was everybody was advanced. Yeah. So, man, this was a very intriguing thought that it was actually probably a fraternity. So tell us a little bit more about this fraternity, these rulers, the elite of the day, and what might their anatomy have been like?
This is a very intriguing point that you raise here, because we often make the mistake, those of us who are interested in these topics, we often make the mistake of having either or rather than both and when we think about the antediluvian world, when we think about the deep past, 12,000 plus years ago, right? So we either think it was either a bunch of brutish Bronze Age people or Stone Age people, right? Or it was an advanced civilization. And I don't think that either of those perceptions are entirely correct. I think that what you're dealing with is the mix of the two. You're dealing with an elite group of individuals, or perhaps a civilization like an Atlantean empire or something like that. But the vast majority of the populace is not on the same level technologically or in possession of the same knowledge. The vast majority of the populace is living at a Bronze Age or a Stone Age level. So it's the idea of this, what I believe the ancients refer to as the golden race, that there was an elite brotherhood of people, of entities living in the antediluvian world who were privy to certain knowledge that they used to dominate, that they used to subjugate the rest of the human populace on Earth. Now, let me make it clear right off the bat that there are two dichotomous perspectives of the deep past, 12,000 plus years ago. What's, what we refer to as the Stone Age. For people thinking about alternative history, there's two dichotomous ways to think about this, and they're totally dichotomous because, on the one hand, you have most of the cultures around the earth, the ancient records, when they remember the Golden Age, they remember it very fondly and with longing. They look back to the Golden Age as this was the height of bliss on planet Earth. And they mourn the loss of the world of the gods. They mourn the fact that this great cataclysm brought their world to a swift and abrupt end. And they're always longing for the return of the Golden Age, and always hoping that the gods will one day descend again to the earth and share their knowledge and so forth. That's very prevalent we can call that in the pagan worldview. But then you have, on the other hand, you have the Hebrew worldview, the ancient Hebrew worldview, which views and we can call that the biblical worldview, which views the Golden Age and the advent of the descent of the Watchers and so forth, the descent of the gods and their commingling with men and so forth, and copulating with women, procreating offspring, hybrid offspring. From the biblical perspective, that was a dystopic nightmare. That was the worst time on earth. It was a time in which the human race was subjugated to the offspring of the gods, who in the biblical account were giants. And it was remembered as a time of great wickedness and evil. And there's elements of that in a lot of these other stories, like Atlantis, for example. The story of Atlantis is that the people became wicked, basically, and so they were punished in a cataclysm. So you have the same sentiments still flowing through the pagan accounts, but the Hebrew account is very stark in that as I said, it views the antediluvian world as a dystopian nightmare. It was just awful. It was not a good time to be alive. The knowledge that the gods had imparted to mankind wrought great chaos and bloodshed on the earth. It didn't elevate mankind. It wasn't like this wonderful time of wisdom and knowledge. It was, in fact, the opposite. It was the beginning of brutal warfare, and it was the mass slaughtering of people through warfare and through all of the other things that the Watchers were teaching, that the gods were teaching to men, and that the mankind was being corrupted, morally corrupted. So you have these two very dichotomous views, and I think that the best dichotomy here is the Hebrew account and the Egyptian account. The Egyptian account, you have Osiris is here on earth at Zep Tepi the first time. Osiris is going around civilizing, on this mission of the civilizing mission, going around the earth, civilizing these primitive cultures, bringing harmony, teaching them that they should, that they should have fair laws and they should treat each other with kindness, and that they should have systems of justice, and teaching them the civilizing principles, writing and reading and so forth. That's the Egyptian. That's what the Egyptians are saying about Zep Tepi. Again, the Hebrew account could not be more dichotomous. It could not. It's the polar opposite view, which I find very intriguing, because only one of those can be correct. I mean, perhaps there's a middle ground view where it was both of those things, maybe a little both of those things going on, but so that I find that very intriguing, and that's very important to remember when thinking about the Golden Age. There's very different perspectives about its benefit to mankind. And so, whatever the case, again, all of the ancients record that it came to an abrupt end in cataclysm. So, again, these are some things that I think people get confused about. Not only that dichotomy I was talking about between the Egyptian view and the Hebrew view, but also returning to the point of the idea that everybody alive, those who subscribe to the alternate view of history, that everybody alive at that time was somehow enjoying this advanced civilization, or that everybody alive at that time were cavemen. And again, I think it's a very complex mix where you have the golden race, you have again, it's like this brotherhood, the offspring of the gods and their offspring are privy to the knowledge, are privy to the technology, are subjugating the other cultures. And that's even, there's even, you can even find the residue of this concept in the Atlantean tale, because Atlantis was an empire, and it was according to the myth, especially in Plato's Critias and Timaeus, Atlantis was an empire that was on a warpath and that had subjugated other continents and other nations. So this was not just a peaceful, loving, civilization according to the myth. This was a civilization that used its technological might to subjugate its neighbors, presumably Bronze Age or Stone Age level people.
As Plato relates the tale of Atlantis, that mentions that the gods distributed the whole earth into portions and made themselves temples, and that Poseidon, I believe, was given the island of Atlantis. Any ideas on how the earth might have been portioned off as like this? And do you think Atlantis actually existed itself, or was that more of an allegory of this old world?
Well, I think we need to back up and define what we mean by the gods, because again, we're going to run into two perspectives here. Actually, there's three perspectives here that are most prevalent. The one that's the popular view now with the masses is the ancient astronaut theory, right? That the gods were aliens, were actually an extraterrestrial race that descended and so forth. That's one perspective. B, that the gods were just enlightened humans, that the gods were just advanced from an advanced civilization, right? That they were just human beings, but they were very advanced human beings. Or C, that the gods were more in a biblical sense, that the gods were non-human exalted beings, transcendent beings that descended to the earth, not necessarily just an alien faction, extraterrestrial faction, as conceptualized by the ancient astronaut theorists, but more in the biblical sense, that these are more like what Christians call fallen angels. So those are three perspectives. I would say the three prevailing perspectives on who the gods were. Nobody really believes that the gods were who the Egyptians thought they were, or who the Sumerians thought they were. That these were actual deities who could do the things that are described in the religious texts. Most people kind of just assume that's mythos, that's mythology. It's fanciful. So when we talk about the gods and apportioning their empire, we have to pick one of those perspectives and then narrow in on it and then drill down on it, because they all have a different explanation. And what I'm most familiar with and what I personally subscribe to is the biblical worldview. And so I believe that there was, according to the Book of Enoch, which is an extra biblical text that was discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Enoch describes in great detail what occurred from the biblical perspective, in that there were 200 watchers, what the Book of Enoch describes and what the Bible describes as watchers, who descended to the earth in the days of Jared in the antediluvian world, and they had a very specific purpose in mind, and they desired to do something. And this gets complicated, but in my book, I talk about what I believe were the three primary motives of the Watchers, why they did it. And I'm trying to remember the three things that I had that I list there, but certainly they wanted to have sex with human women. I mean, that's clear in the biblical account and in the book of Enoch, that these Watchers lusted after human women. They desired to copulate with them. So that's a very basic carnal impulse that drew the Watchers to the earth. They were looking at the daughters of men, the daughters of Adam, and they found them to be very attractive. Okay, so that's one element that drew them here, and that's one of the motivations of what they were doing on the earth. But that's not the only motivation, because the book of Enoch further describes the machinations of the Watchers as not only did they want to copulate with these women, they wanted to procreate. They wanted offspring. So that's the second thing. They didn't just want to come down and have intercourse with human women. They wanted to procreate families, which is very important to some of the theological content that I have in my book that I describe concerning the machinations of the Watchers and the different things that were the different elements of that. And so the third compulsion, the third thing that was drawing the Watchers to the earth, and I think is the most overlooked and probably the most important, especially as we talk about why they were apportioning the earth among themselves. And that third component is they wanted dominion of the earth. They wanted to take over. They wanted to rule the earth. So those are the three components. You combine those together. They wanted to copulate with human women. They had sexual impulse. They wanted to procreate offspring, and they wanted their offspring, they and their offspring, to rule over the earth. And these three components fit into the pagan narratives, the other narratives concerning Atlantis and so forth, because you have the gods doing those very things, don't you? You have the gods taking human women. For example, Poseidon took a human wife. So he was obviously enamored with human women, took a human wife, and he copulated with her, and they procreated 10 twin hybrid sons. So 5 sets of twins that were part God, part human. So this is precisely what the Greek account is telling us is going on. And then what did they proceed to do? They proceeded to build the city of Atlantis and to create this empire. And presumably, and this is what the other gods were doing as well. They were ruling over the earth. They were, in many cases, not just in the Greek accounts, but basically all of the accounts all over the earth, they're copulating with human women, they're procreating offspring, and they're governing, they're ruling over the rest of the populace. And so if the gods are in a league together, which they always are, right? You have Mount Olympus and you have the gods on Mount Olympus who were in a league, and the Greek pantheon, the same thing in the Roman pantheon. Sometimes they're fighting among each other, but for the most part, they're cooperating, right? They have a mutual goal in mind for what they're doing on earth. And that's exactly what the biblical account says about the Watchers. In the extra biblical account, that they came down, they bound themselves by mutual implications. They swore an oath on the summit of Mount Hermon, which is where they descended. And then they proceeded to go and do exactly what all these myths say they were doing. They were taking human women as wives. That's a very important point, because they weren't just fornicating with these women, they were taking them as wives. And there's a whole little deal there if you want to talk about why they were doing that and the dynamics involved in that. But they were procreating offspring, and they were dominating the earth. So they apportioned the earth amongst themselves so that they could all have their own little corner of the planet that they ruled over with their offspring. And ultimately, as judgment in the book of Enoch, it's described as judgment from God, that God sent, I believe it was Uriel or Michael, one of the other angels, to the earth to entice them to war with each other. And so in the biblical account And by the way, the reason why I bring this up is because you also find this in the other accounts, especially in the Indian accounts, in the Vedas and so forth. You find the ancient Sanskrit narratives. You find the gods going to war with each other, right? So it wasn't just this peaceful, wonderful time where the gods are all hanging out in gardens and enjoying life. They were at some point enticed to war, according to the myths, and they went to war, and it was it was kingdom against kingdom. This god and his offspring and his kingdom against this god and his offspring and his kingdom, and they went at it. And so that preceded the flood, that preceded the cataclysm. So you have these, and I'm trying to be very general here so I can encompass all of the myths together instead of just referring to one specific, just referring to the Hebrew account, or just referring to the Sumerian account, or just referring to the Egyptian account. Trying to be very general, that kind of encompasses all of the stories together. So the gods go to war, and then cataclysm strikes.